I don't always like to put the cart before the horse, but I gotta admit, I'm excited. I got a new space here, and even though it's not really set up, I want to get to work and get back to doing the things that I like to do on my YouTube channel, and building computers is a big part of that. So today, I'm just gonna go for it and build a computer for you guys, but I had to figure out at least somewhat of a good reason to build the system, and a word of warning, things got a little out of hand.
Excellent!
Today's video was brought to you by the new Lightwings fans from Be Quiet, which combine legendary near-silent operation with optimal performance and, of course, RGB lighting. Control the look of your PC with up to 20 addressable LEDs per fan, and choose from standard PWM for airflow or PWM high-speed for use with radiators and heat sinks. They're available in 120mm and 140mm sizes and suitable for any build in need of a functional and tasteful RGB upgrade. So for more on the new Lightwings fans from Be Quiet, click the sponsor link in the video description.
So just to get right to the point, I am building a computer today that's going to act as a pfSense router. And if you have any idea of what that means, you're probably like, Paul, why are you even building a computer to act as a pfSense router? Because pfSense is software that you can run on pretty minimal hardware, and there's like little $100, $100 to $200 all-in-one PCs that you can buy that are passively cooled, that have network cards and everything, that can act as a pfSense firewall/router for you. Or a lot of people just set it up on an old system. They'll repurpose a slightly out-of-date system that can't really be used for work or gaming anymore, and they'll get pfSense up and running, and there's some cool things that you can do with it that honestly I'm not even that familiar with. I'm pretty new to pfSense myself, but given that you can run pfSense on something as simple as like a Raspberry Pi, a lot of you are probably like, Paul, why do you have an i5-11500 right there, LGA 1200 processor? Why do you have a Z590 motherboard, the Z590 plus Wi-Fi, tough gaming from Asus, by the way. And again, why go to all this trouble when there's little mini boxes you can buy for 100, 150 bucks that will do all this with a lot less trouble than actually assembling a system? Well, for one, when I signed up for the internet service here, I did not rent a Wi-Fi router from them because I wanted to provide my own. And then I realized the source of the Wi-Fi router that I was expecting to get it from wasn't going to be ready very soon, and I am actually in need of a Wi-Fi router. And yes, there are pieces of hardware that I could go out and buy that would solve this pretty simply, but I've been interested in pfSense for a while, and my channel is called Paul's Hardware, so I am using some of the hardware that I already had to hopefully solve a problem. I have no idea if it's even going to work out, so hopefully this doesn't turn into a fail video, but let me at least go back over what I got here. So our case is a Fractal Design Focus G. This is from a build that I did last year, and I've recommended this case many times, so I'm putting my money where my mouth is and actually using it for a build that I'm going to be using a little bit more long term. pfSense does seem to have an affinity for Intel hardware based on the various compatibility charts and whatnot that you can look at. The 11500 wasn't going to be my first choice. I could get by with something that's a lot simpler, a lot less power than this, but I discovered that it was already installed in this motherboard, and it actually already had my PureRock Slim 2 installed on top of it as well. I've slightly disassembled that so I can just reassemble it for the purposes of this video. But the nice thing about this motherboard, even though again it is super overkill and nothing I would even remotely recommend for a pfSense build, is it does have a 2.5 gig Ethernet port, and it does have Wi-Fi 6, and both of those are based on Intel hardware. And the one thing that pfSense can be a little bit picky about is the network cards you use, the network interface cards that you use, and again, it does lean towards Intel in terms of plug-and-play type compatibility for that. I sincerely hope that that is the case for this motherboard as well. But if you want some sort of reasonable excuse for throwing this much power into a box meant for use with pfSense, maybe in the future I can do something like VMware on this and do virtualization so I can have pfSense and maybe like a FreeNAS setup or something like that at the same time. No promises though. That is a forward-looking statement, and you can't hold me to it, or whatever companies like Intel and AMD say when they make forward-looking statements. There are integrated graphics in the 11500, so I don't need a GPU, so that's helpful. And then beyond that, I just needed some memory. I could easily get away with like 8 gigs for this, but I grabbed this ToughRAM RGB because adding some RGB to this build will probably make it better somehow, I guess. We also have a little 250 gig SATA SSD. Again, way more than we need, but I couldn't find a SATA SSD lying around that had lesser capacity than that. This also has RGB LEDs, although I may or may not be able to actually plug that in. And then from Be Quiet, we got the PureRock Slim 2, little 92mm air cooler, which is a nice upgrade from the stock coolers, especially the Intel ones. So this helps things stay a little bit quieter since this system is going to be set up over near Joe's desk. And our power supply is the Be Quiet straight rate, power 10. This is a 700 watt 80 plus gold unit. Again, such overkill. However, it also doesn't have the prettiest cabling or anything, so I haven't used it in too many systems. So this being a very functional build versus like an aesthetic build seemed like a good pairing for that as well. And you know, it's got nice efficiency too. So those are my parts, and now it's time for my first actual system build here in my new space. So excited. You know, it's actually 98 degrees Fahrenheit outside today, and if we were doing this back in my garage, we would be racing against the clock until things got too hot in there. Whereas here, we have actually good air conditioning the whole time, so that's so nice.
Thank you, yes.
I had to dig this motherboard box out because I had completely put it in the wrong place. But that allowed me to give you guys, you know, a more authentic experience here, taking the motherboard out of the box. Look, it's in its plastic, and it's all dusty. It's not necessary, I think, for a pfSense build to have a motherboard that's dust-free from the get-go, but it's just a point of pride, I think, you know. This motherboard sat underneath my build table in the garage for quite some time, and that was after I had actually run into some difficulty with it while attempting to test the iGPU. Back in the height of the GPU shortage, people were looking for any solution possible to actually game on, so I was testing the 11500 iGPU against currently available AMD options, and then I got frustrated, and then I kind of put that project on the back burner. I have decided to remove this CPU at least briefly, you know, just to make this build slightly more legitimate. Put a little bit of that classic thermal material remover on there. Get it nice and clean. Ready for the job it was meant to do, to be a firewall router. That's obviously why Intel put so much design work into these chips, their 11th gen Core series. Go ahead and drop her into the socket there. Nice and secure.
And your shoes, man.
What?
You can dust on my shoes.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
This guy.
Didn't know you were that
Still doing it. This fine.
Didn't know you were that kind of a new shoe guy. Dusted. Okay, putting scratches in my... Of course, I've already started to scratch my nice new walnut table here, so I've been transferring things from my house a little bit at a time, and I have not brought any of my desk mats or mouse mats yet, so a little piece of cardboard here. I do have a brand new tube of Corsair TM30 thermal paste. How do you get that? Not too tough to remove. I have a trash can in here yet, do I? A little swirly up on top there. Style points. Pure Rock Slim 2 cooler here. I like this little cooler. I'm not a huge fan of the mounting for it because it still uses the Intel standard style push pin mounts when you've got to turn against the arrow to sort of position those back to where they need to be to install. The arrow there is for removal, so that can be a little bit confusing, and for some reason I can't keep it in my head which way is which. That said, this is just a big step up over the stock coolers. It's going to be a lot quieter. That's why it's made by Be Quiet, right? I guess once you do figure out which way the arrows go, it's not too difficult to just pop them in. I hope. Hey, how dare you? How dare you countermand what I was just narrating to the audience? Oh, that's what happened. So yeah, I was trying to push it through, and that one didn't go through the hole. It got pushed to the side. Oopsie. Be more careful this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's way more work than I was hoping it would be. Next, we mount the fan, which should be way easier. Should be way, oh, did I did that backwards. I did that backwards. You know, it's the first build in the new space, and obviously there was going to be trouble somewhere along the line. I just wasn't expecting it to be the heatsink fan that I've already installed multiple times before. After the pushpin thing got messed up the first time I did it, I went to reinstall, and now it's upside down, which in this case isn't ideal because, you know, you want the fan to be on that side. It doesn't need to be on that side. You can put it on the other side and have it in pull, but it doesn't look as nice there. And the Be Quiet logo's upside down. Is it worth my time to go and remount that one more?
No.
What?
I'll say no.
Is it worth my time to remount this one more time? Joe says no, I say yes. I say yes. I can at least verify that the thermal paste application there was quite ideal. I had a very nice spread there. I'm gonna reuse it again because I just have such a mix of things I'm picky about and things that I apparently don't care about at all, and they don't always make the most sense, really. Our power supply. This is actually a really good power supply. Nice wattage too, 700 watts, just suffers from I don't know, just what is it about this sort of array of colors in a PC build that makes it look so like 1998 or something like that, or mid-2000s, I don't know. This one also has lovely blue accents at the end of its PCI Express graphics power connectors. We do not need those, so I can unplug them and cast them aside. All we actually need for this build is our main 24 pin, our 4+4 8 pin, and then thankfully I had a SATA power connector plugged into this, so that'll let us power our SSD. I didn't really realize this was DDR4 4000 memory from Thermaltake. I was just trying to grab a kit and I was like, oh, RGB, that'd be fun. So this, again, I get, you know, it matches the theme of this build. It is way overkill. It is very impractical for this kind of use, but you know, RGB, you gotta have that. You can tell there's a lot of care and attention to detail in this build because I screwed in all 4 screws on the 2.5-inch drive instead of just 2, or even 1. Sometimes I just do 1. And there it is, pretty much back together at this point. I'm going to put the rear side panel back on, and then we'll fire it up and see how things are looking. Here's a quick look at the internals. I'm not sure what to say about this build. It is stupidly impractical. It's some things I was like, oh, I want to make sure that looks good. Like, oh, I gotta make sure I plug in the HD audio connector down there because it's hanging loose otherwise, and how awful would that look, even though there's no audio needed on this system at all. But you know, all the hardware is there, and now we just get to figure out if it's actually gonna work for our needs. Oh yeah, one more thing. Practically speaking, for a pfSense system, you're gonna need at least 2 network connections, or RJ45 Ethernet connections. You're gonna need one to connect to your modem, to your WAN for your internet connection, and then you're probably gonna want one more to connect something like a network switch, either a gigabit switch or maybe even a 10 gigabit switch. We might upgrade to that down the line. This motherboard has 1 network jack, and as I was gathering parts for the build yesterday, I was like, ooh, I have a 10 gigabit NIC right here. This is actually an ROG Arian 10 gig NIC. But as I mentioned earlier, FreeNAS seems to be pretty particular and it likes Intel network interface cards. So I don't think this is gonna work. From all the research I did yesterday, seemed to indicate this would not be recognized by pfSense. So for right now, I'm hoping to take the internet connection and go into the Ethernet jack on the motherboard, and then to at least temporarily use the Wi-Fi on that if I want to connect up other devices. And then I have a 2-port Intel NIC that I've ordered that's on the way, that's not gonna arrive till tomorrow, but that I can easily slot into an expansion slot to add more wired devices, which I'm definitely gonna want more of, and I can split from that with a network switch if I want to have more wired devices on the network. All right, I got my workstation PC set back up over there, and here is the pfSense build. Let's go ahead and fire it up, make sure everything's functional. Looking good so far. We got some RGB on the motherboard. We got fan spinning. We have, well, at least we had temporary RGB lights on our memory as well. But this is just going to get into the UEFI, and we'll make sure everything's recognized. pfSense.org has a bunch of documentation on the software and what it is and how it works and how to install it and everything. So we're going to be using those walkthroughs for the installation. And just to clarify exactly how overkill my system is, minimum CPU requirement is 500 megahertz and recommended is 1 gigahertz for your CPU frequency. Minimum required RAM, 512 megs. Recommended is 1 gig. So as you can see, we can get by with a lot less hardware than what I have installed in the system today. That said, there's some important information here about selecting your NIC or your network interface card. You should pay attention to that because getting a quality NIC is important, and that's why I am opting for Intel solutions in this area for ease of use and compatibility. And depending on your needs in terms of transfer speeds, you may or may not want to opt for better hardware, so it's not like we're not getting anything out of going with something better than a 1 gigahertz CPU, for example. Beyond that, we're just going to go through these steps as recommended. We're going for the AMD 64-bit installation. We're going to install from a memory stick or a USB stick. We're going to use VGA so we can install using a mouse and a keyboard because we've got the luxury of that. We'll set it up with the mouse and the keyboard, and then you connect it. Then you can use it headless after that and remotely access it over the network if we need to do any other setup or configuration stuff. So yeah, let me grab a USB stick and we can get started. Oh, and by the way, we do seem to have a functional build over here. Hooray, I'm glad about that. And we even have UEFI access where we can see our memory as well as our SSD. So that's good. pfSense download page. Got our USB drive plugged in. pfSense has you download a little app called Balena Etcher in order to flash your USB drive to make it an installer. So we're going to flash from this image right here. Choose our generic flash disk USB device, and we flash. Yes. Oh, look at that, neat little ad for Pi-hole. I want to try some Pi-hole, but you know what I really want to try? Lunch, because Joe just brought lunch. Hey Joe, let's eat.
Sounds good.
Look at that, it's already finished. It's just validating now, and there's barely even started my sandwich. It's delicious though. USB installer is now installed to the pfSense rig, and we just need to boot from that now. Okay, I turned off XMP. DDR4 4000 was not playing very nicely, and we really don't need that anyway, but we've got our flash disk recognized there. So now we go to boot override, and which partition do we boot from? I have no idea. Try this one. Oh, look, that looks like free BSD stuff. There we go, pfSense. Hey, look at that. It's right there. Just boom. Nice logo and everything. It's doing things I didn't even ask it to do. It's a bunch of text flying by on screen, making me feel like I'm super good at computers and I know how computers work, and you know, writing lines of code and command line. It's very good to know all these things. Whoa. All right, well, that was actually pretty quick. So guys, as I hopefully mentioned earlier in the video, I really am a noob to pfSense. I'm going to be learning this as I go, so I don't want to treat this as like a tutorial or how-to or any sort of sense like I know what I'm doing, as evidenced by the hardware choices over here. So down in the video's description, I'm going to link you to some of the tutorials and guides that I have been looking at to sort of walk myself through this. If you're interested in doing it yourself, I'm going to hit accept here and go through a little bit of setup. And hopefully I'll be back in just a moment with at least just maybe a functional router, maybe a functional firewall router. I hope so. Let's find out. I guess I should install first. Default key map. We're gonna go with auto ZFS for this because we have plenty of system memory, and looks good. This all looks good to me. There's even like RAID options here. And thank goodness it's recognized my SSD, so we'll select that. Yes, I'm going to destroy the contents of the SSD. Double last chance. Press arrows. And there it goes. Installation is in progress. So a little bit of time has passed, I've done a little bit more setup, and I've come to an impasse, at least for today. But let me sum up what has happened. First off, since today's video is about a build, did the build come together and is the build functional? Yes, it is. It works. That's good, and that makes me happy. Second, is this functional as a pfSense machine? The answer to that is also yes, and in fact, we're connected up to the broadband router, and according to pfSense, our WAN connection is just fine. Our local network, however, we can't really progress with today, and that is because even though we have a Wi-Fi network adapter integrated into this motherboard, it's a pretty recent one. It's 802.11ax or Wi-Fi 6, and FreeBSD actually only has support up to 802.11n, and they're working on 802.11ac. So if you want to add a wireless access point to a pfSense router and you want it to be one of the more recent standards, you really need to get a separate wireless access point and then just connect it up directly to one of your wired Ethernet ports. So despite that small setback for today, I am confident that when my Intel 2-port gigabit network adapter arrives tomorrow, I'm going to be able to slot it in and fire everything up and connect all my other computers to the network. And let's quickly look forward in time to see what that will be like.
A few moments later.
Thankfully, these arrived as anticipated. So I now have a 2-port Intel gigabit NIC, and I also have this Netgear wireless access point. It's a dual band 2x2 and it's 802.11ac, so not the latest and greatest Wi-Fi 6 stuff, but it was only $27, and I think if you add all this up, yes, I definitely should have still just bought a cheap router or something like that, but let's install this NIC and forget about all that. There we go. Let's fire it up again. Guys, look you guys. The two on top there, the Pro 1000 82576 connections, that's the new card that I just added, and the one on the bottom there is the one that was already there on the motherboard. So now I have 3 wired network connections. Long story short here, guys, it works. I now have a functional pfSense router. My system over here is now connected to it. I accessed the pfSense web interface on this system after it connected to this system over here. Again, you guys, I am not an expert in terms of pfSense, so there's a couple videos linked down in the description you should definitely check out if you're interested in setting this up yourself. For now, though, it is functional. All I gotta do is connect up my network switch and I can connect other devices to this. And then, of course, I also have the Wi-Fi access point to get some Wi-Fi action going as well. Well, I am very glad that all of that went so smoothly and according to plan, but what have we learned today? Well, we've learned that it's a lot more comfortable building a computer for a video on my YouTube channel here in my new space than it is back in my garage, especially on a day when it's nearly 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside. We've also learned a lot about the quirks and nuances of pfSense, although I still have a lot to learn in that category, but at least for now, we have a functional basic router for my use here in the office, and now I can move on with a bunch of other projects that I have lined up here, so stay tuned for that. Get subscribed if you're not already, and if you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the thumbs up button on your way out, and you can also check out my store at paulshardware.net, where you can buy shirts, mugs, pint glasses, and all manner of high-quality merchandise. It's a great way to get yourself some high-quality merchandise. Thanks again for watching this video, you guys, and we'll see you all in the next one.